consider yourself warned. 2. Pre-flight safety demonstration. Sometimes huge truths are uttered in unusual contexts. I fly too much, a concept in a sentence that would have been impossible for me to understand as a young man when every plane journey was exciting and miraculous, when I would stare out of the window at the clouds below and imagine that they were a city or a world, somewhere I could walk safely. Still, I find myself, at the start of each flight, meditating and pondering the wisdom offered by the flight attendants as if it were a koan, or a tiny parable, or the high point of all wisdom. This is what they say. Secure your own mask before helping others. And I think of us, all the people, and the masks we wear, the masks we hide behind, and the masks that reveal. I imagine people pretending to be what they truly are, and discovering that other people are so much more and so much less than they imagined themselves to be, or present themselves as. And then I think about the need to help others, and how we mask ourselves to do it, and how unmasking makes us vulnerable. We are all wearing masks. That is what makes us interesting. These are stories about those masks, and the people we are underneath them. We authors, who trade in fictions for a living, are a continuum of all that we have seen and heard, and most importantly, all that we have read. I have friends who fulminate and bark and explode in frustration because people do not know the references, do not know what is being pointed at, have forgotten authors and stories and worlds. I tend to look at these things from another direction. I was once a blank piece of parchment too, waiting to be inscribed. I learned about things and people from stories, and I learned about other authors from stories. Many, perhaps most, of the stories in this book are part of that same continuum. They exist because other authors, other voices, other minds have existed. I hope you will not mind if, in this introduction, I take the opportunity to point you at some of the writers and places without whom these tales may not have ever seen the light. 3. The luck of the draw. This is my third collection of short fiction, and I know just how lucky I am. I grew up loving and respecting short stories. They seemed to me to be the purest and most perfect things people could make, not a word wasted in the best of them. An author would wave her hand and suddenly there was a world and people in it, and ideas. A beginning and a middle and an end that would take you across the universe and bring you back. I loved all kinds of short story collections, from the anthologies of ghost and horror stories I'd pick up as a boy to the single author collections that would reshape the inside of my head. My favorite collections would not just give me short stories, but they would also tell me things I didn't know about the stories in the book and the craft of writing. I would respect authors who did not write an introduction. I could not truly love them as I loved the authors who made me realize that each of the stories in the anthology was written, actually made up word by word and written down by someone human who thought and breathed and walked and probably even sang in the shower, like me. The wisdom in publishing is that short story collections don't sell. All too often, short story collections are viewed as vanity projects or are published by small presses and not seen as real in the way that novels are real. Still, for me, the short stories are the places where I get to fly, to experiment, to play. I get to make mistakes and to go on small adventures. And there's something about the process of putting together a collection like this that is both scary and eye-opening. When I put stories together, themes reoccur, reshape, and become clear. I learn what I've been writing about for the previous decade. 4. General apology. I firmly believe that short story collections should be the same sort of thing all the way through. They should not hodgepodge and willy-nilly assemble stories that were obviously not intended to sit between the same covers. They should not, in short, contain horror and ghost stories, science fiction and fairy tales, fabulism and poetry, all in the same place. They should be respectable. This collection fails this test. For this failure, as for so much, I request your indulgence and forgiveness, and hope only that somewhere in these pages you may encounter a story you might otherwise never have read. Look, here is a very small one, waiting for you now. Shadder. Some creatures hunt. Some creatures forage. The shadder lurk. Sometimes, admittedly, they skulk. But mostly, they just lurk. The shadder do not make webs. The world is their web. The shadder do not dig pits. If you are here, you have already fallen. There are animals that chase you down, run fast as the wind, tirelessly to sink their fangs into you to drag you down. Shadder do not chase. They simply go to the place where you will be when the chase is over, and they wait for you there, somewhere dark and indeterminate. They find the last place you would look and abide there, as long as they need to abide, until it becomes the last place that you look and you see them. You cannot hide from the shadder. They were there first. You cannot outrun the shadder. They are waiting at your journey's end. You cannot fight the shadder because they are patient. They will tarry until the last day of all, the day that the fight has gone out of you, the day that you are done with fighting, the day the last punch has been thrown, the last knife blow struck, the last cruel word spoken. Then, and only then, will the shadder come out. They eat nothing that is not ready to be eaten.